my teeth on me. And them a say love with it. Can't for me again. You can't for me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy candle, we can't buy time. You can't for me again. Can't for me again. You can't for me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. You touch a line and a resort to crime. You can't for me again. Come me say big up all the charities and all of the givers. Some a go like say them powerful, me no make a bigger. The hundred the promises none of them not deliver. Cut up the youth and rough and down in our river. Them a bold money and they lie them. Corruption smell and they pocket them smell. When police don't a market like Satan out of hell go mash up people start and thief when them spell. Keep on me. What they treat the market man. Keep on me. What them a treat the cat man. Keep on me. What they treat the peanut man. Keep on me. What them a treat the dirt man. Keep on me. What them a treat the son man. Keep on me. What them a treat policeman.
Boom! I mean, I say a couple to the flex they represent for Wayne Global TV. So I say, you know the code in the Wayne Global TV is what fully blessed on the 90 days. So I say, yeah man, to the fullest. Yeah man, make sure them log in to Wayne Global TV. So I say, check it out. So I say, one cup of flex. So I say, Wayne Global. When you watch you know, see them a plan up and a try to put them money pan we head. But man a live too long, them want Wayne Global for dead. To him juggle so smooth that them want him life for dread. I through the bank I like the break, but we ain't all about the bread. We open up in the ears and no listen when we said, cause we lyrics them so smooth like the linen pan the bed. Them want we fit fall, we living pan the edge, I must say true, we make this them. We ain't Global TV, we are 90, hey. And 90, who Jaja bless, say no man can curse. Give it the Range Rover, who no drive yours. Boom! We in Global TV to the fullest one cup of excellence. See me?
Petulant, cronified, whimsical, and sissified is our politics. Good evening and welcome to the People's Point of View. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I want to take the time out to say to the new subscribers who continue to subscribe to Global Television on a daily basis, welcome to the Global TV family. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for all your continuous support. I want to say to my Global TV fan from day dot to now, big up, massive respect. Your support is very much loved and appreciated. Our politics has become petulant, cronyized, whimsical, and sissified. Call Dr. Brokeback Mountain. Call Miss Mary Puss. Call the city puss. That which they say had good upbringing. But you put any fish in a stagnant water and see what happens to that fish. Call Miss Mary's cat. Remember when you had jumps and prance all over the place? Don't touch. Hey, Juliet. Remember Juliet turn up on a bigger hoof than Dr. Brokeback Mountain. Juliet Holness also have a bigger chest and a broader shoulder than Dr. Brokeback Mountain. But we will get into you, Nigel. We feel like tying our horse tonight. Will you be under the horse, behind the horse, or being dragged by the horse tonight, Dr. Clark? Miss Mary Puss. Good evening all, and welcome. A part of my plan tonight was I wanted to share with you Dr. the Honorable, Dr. the Honorable Senator, what's your name again? I don't know what's your name. The name will come back to me. The name will come back to me. I don't know who do. I want to play her response, but I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Has Miss Curtis been pushed? We knew Miss Curtis was coming up to her retirement. But I'm aware of a memo that was sent to all members of parliament from Miss Curtis that she will be retiring as clerk of the house as effective of Saturday, the 6th, Saturday the 6th of April. Let me check. As of Saturday, she will be retiring. So, if that is the case, has Miss Curtis been pushed by the recent scapegoating event? But I'm sure, thank you, Patricia, there will be further development in that. But can Juliet Holness withstand this? Or should we allow Juliet Holness to get away with this? Who should we tie our horse to tonight? Good evening to all my family members. Good evening to my community of Parity and the parish of St. Elizabeth. Good evening. Good evening to all my subscribers and members. Good evening to all my moderators, viewers, and chatters in the comment. Good evening and welcome to the Global TV experience. Good evening to those on the X, on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Debbie Jarvis, good evening. Patricia Matthews, good evening. Good evening and welcome. Sunshine, good evening. Dion Johnson, good evening. Patrick Evans, good evening and welcome. Good evening. Who else is here? Natalia Freeman, good evening and welcome. Amazing Grace, good evening. Good evening all and welcome. Yvonne Johnson, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Shauna Smith, good evening and welcome. Michelle Lewis Wilson's God Gift, good evening. JC, good evening. Gloria Morris, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining. Good evening to Raymond. Cynthia B, good evening. Patricia Matthews, Georgia Dennis, Michelle Johnson, good evening. Mary Messenger TV, good evening. Rosemary Samuels, good evening. Patricia Williams, good evening. Jamaican Carlos TV, JC TV, good evening, bro. What's up? EM, good evening. Kirk Edwards, good evening. Christine Gilbert, good evening. James, good evening and welcome. Maxine Cummins, good evening. Tash, good evening. Monica Hawthorne, good evening. Good evening. Cousin Myrna, how are you doing? Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining. Faith, Sister Faith, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining. God at my altar, good evening and welcome. Beulah, good evening. Jackie Bryan, good evening. Ron Perry, good evening and welcome all. Thank you all for joining us. Has the clerk of the house been pushed by the scapegoating event? By the scapegoating event of the Holness regime? Have the clerk of the house been pushed by the scapegoating event? We knew it was coming up to her retirement. But this new embarrassing saga for a woman, God at my altar, for a woman of such standing in her career, in her public service career, which have served the people of Jamaica over the years in our parliament in different capacity. Donna Dana Morris Dixon, yes, that's the lady that I want to play you her response to Damien's Crawford response to the budget presentation. Because Holness have a way of taking these good people and mess them up. Like it is said, Dr. Fingerference come from good upbringing. Mary Clarke and Justice Clarke's son, Teacher Clarke and Justice Clarke's son, come from good upbringing. Good upbringing thief, as it turns out. Good upbringing criminal, as it turns out. But we will get back to that. Call Carlos Gray there, Carl Rattigan, and the others, the so-called Dirty 30. I have bad news for dear Tuno. Bad news, Carlos Gray. Don't shoot the messenger. Me, I bear bad news this evening. Bearing bad news, do not shoot the messenger. Then someone if you come home. Dwayne Hutchinson, good evening and welcome. I am bearing bad news. Tomorrow we will peeping at them business, you know. Because I said, them have one launch of something or other. Tomorrow. Them are going to have them 10th biannual diaspora conference. Thursday, beginning at 10 a.m. Jamaica time. It's going to be on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade website. So we hope to bring that to you because we need to follow the lies. Remember, we're in an election cycle, a general election cycle. So we need to follow the lies because they're depending on you, the diaspora, support for funding, for influencing also your people at home in which way to vote. So we must keep ahead of the lies and the scandals. Don't let them surprise us. Nothing, Brittany Lyon, will jump out of the bag over here. So we're going to do Peeping Tom tomorrow. We're going to be doing some Peeping Tom tomorrow upon them. We want to hear the lies and the promises because the conference, the 4-day conference, is to take place during June 16 to 19 this year at the Montego Bay Convention Center. But never mind that. Let's go back to what? Terry Long. Hey. Terry Long said, Carlos Gray, we should. He's inviting us to come home. One of the foreigner do. What would they do? Terry Long said, remember the Prime Minister said the economy is doing well, Prince Diamond. And the economy is going to become a caring economy. So the economy is going to become a caring economy. What we that foreign I run up with mouth for? They say if you come home, Carlos, one of that foreign I run up on the mouth for. Go on home, them say they come home. But ask yourself this question, Terry Long. What if Patrick Bailey decides to pull his gun, machete, or knife at us? What if Julian Silver decide to turn his gun at us? Pamela McNeil. Pain and belly hot. Orlando Terryland. We don't have ambulance for call where we used to a foreign Terryland. Where we deal with a bad road. Me don't know about some, but me will go back home, go carry the water and them something upon my head. Me not really mind that. But pain a belly, hot. And when you're in a country where you can't call an ambulance, when you're in a country where you can't get a dialysis, an X-ray, a CT scan, or an MRI, simple a bed. Orlando Terryland says you should come home and sit or lie in the emergency room for 72 hours, sometime to almost a week, waiting for a bed. Carlos, what are you waiting for? Now, come on now, Carlos. What on earth are you waiting for? Orlando Terryland says, come home. Una we referring. Una we referring, Carlos. Rattigan and the Dirty 30. But what if Patrick Bailey decide to turn his gun at us, Orlando Terryland? Dorrit White, good evening and welcome. What if Patrick Bailey decide to turn his gun at us? Who do we turn to? When we will live a foreign, wanna ask to come home. When you, the government and your public servants, organization and agencies, Florence Hamilton, good evening, violate our rights or fail to give us the service we deserve and that they are paid to give us, who do we complain to when we do not have a political ombudsman? Backs me, Andrew Holness, backs. You can backs returning officer, Andrew Holness. You can, me know your hand big, about the same size as Juliet foot, so you must backs hot. Backs me, Andrew Holness, or a returning officer. Abina Sudoki. Navlet Samuels, good evening and welcome. Backs me, Andrew Holness. A long time, Andrew Holness got anger management issue. Even though every time he is being questioned, it comes out clear to all of us that the Prime Minister has an anger management issue. The Prime Minister has very low tolerance level. Low tolerance Prime Minister. Lizard skin Prime Minister. You have to be careful how you walk against grass. Petulant, dismissive, tone deaf, angry. Was it Siaga that say you don't have Prime Minister? You're not a Prime Minister material. And if he said Nicola Williams, are we not seeing it plain and blatantly in front of us, especially since 2020? Come home, they said. But ask yourself, come home to what? The little money we have to buy food. We have to go take you pay the Chinese them for drive on your pretty road. Which is the only thing you can talk about. Pretty road and 200 house over 8 years. And you call it your grand social housing project. Come home to what? To the slow foot jogging, gum chewing bureaucracy? Come home to the landlessness? Come home and have beach figure pan? Come home and do what? Come home and don't have land to develop business. Come home and do what? Along the Terry Long. You should be telling us that. Come home and do what? These failed politicians. But we're going to peep in time on them tomorrow. But me see this another one here. I plan for the fish farming. But you come from St. Elizabeth, Flight Green. So you should have known that St. Elizabeth was the breadbasket for Jamaica, both in the agriculture and the fisheries industry. If you, Mr. Chichi, name out your head, as Colin Bell says, if you knew the history of the economy of St. Elizabeth, you would know that the fishing industry that powered up Jamaica fisheries economy was controlled by the people of St. Elizabeth, by and large. We were the ones who sell fish to those of you from Kingston, Old Harbor, Rocky Point. We also flourish St. Elizabeth and St. James. Minnesota enough to grow tilapia. But what about investment in our fisheries industry, such as Pedro Keys and local fishing, dummy Flight Green? What about that? The knee-jerk reaction ideas that you all are coming up with as a consequence to how you were battered at the local government election. Verna Timpson, Elaine Turner. Good evening. Is why we're jumping around some prancing, coming up with these useless ideas that we're going to have 8 years to think about and implement. Michelle Johnson. I want to pause to do this. I keep forgetting it. I want to take the time out to, on behalf of the Global TV family, to say condolences to Buju Banton and the entire Myrie family and the passing of one of his sons. Our whole heart condolences. It is awfully not easy to bury a loved one, but for parent burying children, it could be and is seen oftentimes as one of the most difficult circumstances one can endure. So, condolences to Buju Banton and the entire Maori family. But back to where were we, Mr. Greenwich? Si Nigel Clarke removed duty after you carrying in whatever want carrying for poison with food chain, JP. Good evening and welcome. But not paying enough attention to how productive the Jamaica economy can be if the real investment, Holness tried to box a returning officer. My attention was drawn to this blog post on the Reggae Boys forum. I'm going to try go through it with you because, as I say, a long time. It's going to be a difficult read for me because it's on a dark background. Precious Allen, good evening and welcome. But I'm going to try fondle my way through it. Andrew Holness attempt to box a returning officer. No, a presiding officer, really. And this blog article was in November 3rd, 2011. Allegations of open voting attempts by the Jamaica Labour Party, Andrew Holness, to intimidate electoral officials and various other irregularities were brought before the election court. On Wednesday, the court also noted that the allegations were serious and Holness did not file an affidavit in relation to those allegations. Violence, petulance. Dudley Thompson QC, who represented Dr. Warren Blake, the People's National Party candidate, said the affidavit filed in court has not been denied. He said there were criminal elements. There were criminal elements and asked that the file to be sent to the Director of Public Prosecution. Mr. Thompson said he hoped the DPP will demonstrate that such things will not be put up with in the future. He asked the court to make pronouncement that this sort of atmosphere which exists in the constituency and election day, 18th of December last year, will not be tolerated. He also asked the court to make a ruling as to whether a person can vote openly. He said there was an obligation to the general public to see to it that the secrecy of ballot was preserved. An affidavit was given that Holness and supporters went to polling division 72 at 11:30 a.m. on election day and said that the polling division should have been at a different location. The presiding officer said they want to take the ballot box to the St. Stephen's School. The presiding officer said In her affidavit, Holness attempted to box her when she said, attempt to box her. She said soldiers intervened, saying that the box should not be removed. The affidavit, disclosed that polling division 72, a total of 338 votes were cast for Dr. Blake, 7 for Holness, and 1 for Steve Daly, the National Democratic Movement candidate. As the preliminary count on 22nd December, at the final count, the box was empty. At the final count, the box was empty. And Lord Jesus. Hallelujah. The presiding officer then expressed shock that the ballots were missing. Hey, Holness, take them, dash them away. Attorney at law Ruby Scott submitted that the affidavits presented before the court were not credible because they were taken from presiding officers and poll clerk who were employed to the electoral office. She submitted she submitted there were no affidavits from electors in the constituency, and that irregularity outlined could apply to every constituency. The irregularities outlined were not sufficient to substantiate distortion of the electoral process, she said. So, if Andrew tampered with the ballot box in polling division 72 in 2011, what's stopping Andrew Holness? Or what would stop Andrew Holness, Rodney Reed, and Darren Daly? What would stop Andrew Holness from meddling with your election on the 26th of February this year? If he did it in 2011, what would stop your prime minister? The ballot box was empty by the time it got to final count. The entire ballot box was emptied. Not only that, the prime minister decided to attempt to use violence, or threatened to use violence to have his way. It leads one to ask the question, can we trust this Andrew Holness regime and this Jamaica Labour Party with the handling of our general election, 2025 September? Given that both offices of accountability, the Electoral Office of Jamaica, which regulates our election, and the Office of the Political Ombudsman, which police our public officials, is in the office of the Prime Minister. Used to say further bang around. I go come next September. Will we enter into a phase of the American 2000 general election where the courts have to decide whether it was Gore or Bush Are we heading to the Gore versus Bush 2025? Because Andrew, under no circumstances, Pauline Dixon, will concede to a defeat. Andrew Holness, as it's shown in 2011, is prepared to use violence if needs be in order to hold on to power. Do you trust Andrew Holness and your election? Call Dr. Death. You're not ashamed. Me say if you're not ashamed, Juicy Patty reached foreign before Dr. Chang. Juicy Patty have visa figure big America. And your Minister of National Security, a country that is working with the United States on Crime Initiative. Remember when Condoleezza Rice was Bush National Security Advisor? Ever see Bush gone away, Laxi Gregory, without Condoleezza Rice by his side? Patty have visa. Patty can travel. Dr. Chang is unavailable to travel to the United States. Dr. Chang is unavailable to go to America and sit down in these security and national crime initiative conversation. I mean, Patty. Then might as well we give our national security advisor to Juicy Patties. Because Juicy Patties, you see, Dr. Chan, is planning to spread their wings across the 50 states of the United North America. Give the job to Juicy Patty. Maybe they'll be able to tap into crime initiative from various states, which Dr. Chan is not able to do because of his crime allegiance to the gangs of Western Kingston. Not me saying it, Dr. Chan. It's the WikiLeaks document that says it. When you carry back, Dr. Chan, don't call me name, say me and mix you up. Talk is me say WikiLeaks, say news carrying. But don't go on like me and make up story upon you. Juicy Patty reached there. Give the job to Juicy Patty. Because Dr. Chan just now go make it. People of Jamaica. The Jamaican diaspora in the United Kingdom has been urged to join and sign a petition demanding that the racist Frank Hester be stripped of his Order of the British Empire honorary award. But what is the people of Jamaica doing at home, where 5 million US dollars of their taxpayer money is propping up the company of racist Frank Hester when we could have had it for $2.4 million? As some mathematicians say, 150% more than we could have had it for. And that contractual deal with this racist criminal that want to have all black women shot, his contractual deal with the state of Jamaica is used in his line of defense to say he can't be racist because he's doing business with Jamaica. Are you happy, people of Jamaica, to be on the front line of the defense of racism, like we have been placed on the front line of aggression against another of our brotherly states? All for imperialist vantage point. Nothing to do with our political, social, or economic development. All old masters walk. But what are you, the people of Jamaica, doing? What will you be prepared to do in order to put pressure on your government and minister of having shares in funeral home, Dr. Christopherson, to make sure this contract with racist Hester cannot stand? The people of Jamaica cannot go into a contract with someone who wants to kill the women of Jamaica, hand over their personal and medical records to such a person. Protest with your pen. I told you from the other day, write to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, write to the office of the Prime Minister, and those of us in the United Kingdom and the further diaspora, write to your embassy or your high commission. Copy the office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Health and Wellness into that email. Don't phone them. Them a liar and thief like Nigel Clarke. But don't you think Nigel Clarke owed us a lot of explanation? Nigel Clarke owed us a lot of explanations. Nigel Clarke robustly defended Juliet Holness. He did. He robustly defended Juliet Holness. But now that we know why Nigel Clarke has defended Juliet, Nigel Clarke is nowhere to defend himself. Juliet is nowhere to defend Nigel. But we, the people, need an explanation as to whether the sweetheart deal between Dunn and Clarke, if Nigel Clarke is getting any kickback out of this, and we want to know if Dunn owned the building under a lease or under a leasehold or under a freehold. And we also would want to know, Dr. Clarke, if when Don bought that building, Don knew that Nigel Clarke, Amazing Grace, was looking for a building to host Duppy in. Because for the amount of years you have to pay for your empty building, Nigel Clarke, you have to host Duppy in there. I wonder if you set up ritual table in there nighttime behind black curtain, Nigel, why you not can retrofit it with desk and computer and air conditioner and whatever else. Why would it take so much years, Nigel Clarke? The amount of money, me know me done, me no shame for tax me done. Done sadam me counting past 10. No ban yet. Rodney Reed, good evening and welcome. But the amount of money, Nigel Clarke, where you pay in a rent, could that not have built a building complete and retrofitted for the purpose? The amount of rent, Nigel, no could have been a 2-story building out of the whole of them rent money there. And let me advise you something, Holness. You see, if you want your housing program where you're shoved down with throat, because I'm going to play under the Honorable Dr. Morris Dixon shortly. But let me advise you something, Andrew Holness. When you appoint people to the Senate, you appoint them based on expertise. Your national, your social housing, to make it a flagship program, Holness, it's quite a beautiful budget. Take out one of the nonopus and non-skulls out of the Senate. Appoint Dr. Murray Gow, Dr. Donna Murray Gow, to the Senate and give her the portfolio with that handsome budget for your social housing flagship plan. And then, Andrew Holness, you will say house and public accountability. One, that you, Mr. Fatherfinger, will not be able, and your administration and 40th thieves will not be able, Sharon Powell, to subject yourselves to. Let us listen to Dr. Senator Dana, the Honorable, because them long title and name there. Let us listen. It's important to listen to the people that Holness train to confuse you.
Thank you, Senator Crawford.
Right, let's have a listening to
bring
this.
it to a close, and so we can, yes. Senator Dr. Dana Morris Dixon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And this is my first time contributing to this type of debate. And it's an honor, but it's also a bit sad, because I know when I was growing up, I would watch the Senate or look at what was going on in the Senate, and I always thought that the level of the conversation was at a very high level, and that the debates were really very substantive and really based in facts. And so I was a little bit disappointed in terms of some of what I have heard so far, because we can debate and debate vigorously, but then we don't need to be mean-spirited, and we don't need to have data that is not correct. And that is my key concern, is that, you know, I really like everyone across there. I like Damien a lot. He knows that I like him a lot. And so I expect a lot from him. And I will say I was disappointed in some of what has been said. And I will say, you know, the young people who are here and that were bored to death from St. Andrew High School for girls. We're hearing some fuzzy maths. And I remember that I used to teach economics at St. Andrew High School for girls. When CAPE was introduced, I was the first teacher there to teach economics to St. Andrew High School for girls. And my students did very well in economics. We got first and third in the island my first year teaching them. And so I know that they who were up there that did economics would know that what you were saying was not correct, and it did not sound like sound economic facts. And so I'm going to go through some of it. And it's sad that I do have to do this, because I remember when I was there teaching, I was teaching in 2001 and 2002. And at that time, I had to be talking about growth in a very conceptual manner, because we didn't know what growth was in Jamaica. Sustained growth was not a thing. And so when I would teach them, I would be saying, if we had growth in Jamaica, this is what it would look like. And this is what sound economic policies can look like. And I am glad that I'm a part of an administration that has been able to implement economic policies that we have only dreamed of for years and years and years. And so these young ladies who are here today listening to us, they're listening in a different context than when I was able to teach at their school. When I was there, growth was a dream. Now growth is a reality. And it's a reality year after year after year, quarter after quarter. We see it over and over again. And it's because of the good policies of the administration. And then when we talk about some of the things that I heard about the tax collection numbers and so on, and the maths just wasn't mathing for me when I saw some of the charts that were used, and even what was discussed today. It is very clear that we need to do more work generally in our country in terms of teaching.
Hit the like button, my people.
Leads to greater tax collection, as people who weren't employed before can finally pay taxes, and businesses who have grown from small to large are earning more and therefore filing more taxes. When you have a small company that goes from a $2 million profit, for example, to $20 million profit, yes, their taxes in terms of the amount they pay will go up, but it also means that there's more income in their pockets, in their families' pockets. And of course, they have employed more people. So more people are going to be paying taxes, and people who were previously employed, who were unemployed, will now be employed. No, it is not theory. It is not theory. It is not theory. And the reality is that
Senator,
many of us.
Minister, just hold a second for me, please. Senator Fraser Beans, come on, man. You have been here for many, many years. And I know you know better than that. So you get your opportunity. So be calm. You will get your opportunity, please. But you are distracted. I cannot hear the speaker. Please.
Yeah, I'm coming. And I think really, we really do have to be respectful. And I think I've sat here and listened to everyone, and I've listened to everybody's points. And now I stand to give my own points. And I think everybody is valuable. And I really do feel that when we're in here, we are representing our country and all the people in Jamaica. And I don't think that this kind of bantering is necessarily the right thing. And that's my personal opinion, Mr. President. And I will continue to live by that. And I will always respect you and listen to all of you on that side. Now, the reality is that we have seen increases in tax collection. That is inevitable when you have a growing economy. And it's a good thing that we have a growing economy. The question now is, when you have the increased tax collection, what do you do with it? And that's where I would want the debate to be going. Are we doing the right things with it? And the reality is, as you get that new intake in taxes and the greater intake in taxes, the thing is, what you should be asking is, how are we using that increased intake to ensure that we have more intake going forward? And what I posit, my friends on the other side, is that we are using it in the right way according to this budget. And I can tell you, we're always going to disagree on this. We're always going to have differences of opinion in terms of how to use money. The reality is, I am proud because we finally have some money that we can debate about in terms of how we use it. We never used to be able to do that. And so I see this as a good position to be in. And then we talked to, thanks to many Jamaicans, and I'm glad you said that, thanks to many Jamaicans, and it was across the aisle. It was people on that side, on this side too, but it is still important. And you bring up things like the Balmal disease, which I would love to talk to you about some more in terms of the Balmal disease, because for me, when I'm thinking about that, I don't necessarily put that in the Jamaican context, because when we're talking about that phenomenon, we tend to be talking about it in terms of a developed country kind of reality, and we're looking at it in terms of services and why, for example, when he was writing, he was talking about education and why education and the cost of education is so high, and why the cost of medical services are so high vis-a-vis manufacturing that has gone down. But I think in a Jamaican context, really, when we're talking about productivity, what we should be talking about is more on the total factor productivity line, about what it is, what are the different elements that lead to productivity. So I was glad you brought up economic theory, and I like us having debates about that. And that's the kind of debate I want us to be having, where I say, yes, you brought up Balmal disease, and it is in fact a phenomenon that has been seen. But the question is, does it matter in the Jamaican context? And is that the right way to be looking at it? And I would posit that the real things to be looking at in terms of productivity in our context is more in relation to investment in capital and also technology, in terms of those factors leading to greater productivity going forward. Some of those link into my own portfolio, and I'll come back to, obviously, technology, because I believe that when we are looking at our country and looking at productivity, some of those things, exactly, it does. And so over time, as we see incomes rise, I think that we can have the debate about Balmal disease a bit more. But I think in terms of where the Jamaican economy is, we can have a different conversation. For now, you and I can have a conversation on that. But as I said, that's the kind of debate I think that is useful for people, where we're debating on substance. We're using the education that we got, that many didn't get at the University of the West Indies, and using economic theory to really think through what's the future for our country and what our policies should look like. And so I stand here in my first presentation on the appropriation bill, really hoping that as we go forward, this is the kind of debate that we can have, and we can actually stick to the actual bill. Having said that, Mr. President, I will speak a little bit about digital transformation, which goes back to some of the issues in terms of technology and how we use technology and how technology can lead to productivity. And I think we're all agreeing that if we're to get the kind of growth that we want, given the position that we are in, productivity is going to have to be a critical component. And we believe that technology is one area that will allow us to have increased productivity going forward. And in this budget, in the appropriation bill and the allocations, especially to OPM and also to the Ministry of Science, Energy, Transportation, there are a lot of things in here that relate to digital transformation. And I think all of these things will be able to help us to start addressing the productivity issues. These issues have not been there just overnight. They've been there for a long time, and it will take a while to address it. Now, digital transformation must be a steadfast pursuit in our national development mission. And I was pleased that the Prime Minister used his presentation to outline that vision and give some.
Bring them in from the fields of sin. Good evening and welcome to the last line of defense. We're not afraid of no good grown-up picnic them and the Jamaican Prime Minister. This Andrew Holness have a way of taking up picking them and turn them into criminal overnight, into liars, into public fools overnight. Just like Uno, me no know what she talk about. And me now go pay in my head to find out what she talk about. But my problem with her, she said, Damien, come with fuzzy maths. And me no say she fuzz out her defuzz the maths. And she go on a wild goose chase looking for chicken. Chicken that are flying. Miss Morris Dix. Andrew Holness have a way of taking people picking, like he took the Honorable, Dishonorable Dr. Brokeback Mountain and turn him into one big thief and liar, Miss Mary Cat. Andrew have a way of taking your children and turn them into criminals. Oh, no, see plain and clear. Shauna Smith, good evening. Christine Gilbert. Mergo Hagen, good evening and welcome. Jenny, good evening. Tash, good evening. Real Sweet, good evening. Brittany Lyon, good evening and welcome. Paria Maria Ali, good evening and welcome. Good evening, always observing, good evening and welcome, Laxa Gegri. Good evening, JP. Browse, good evening and welcome. Chanel Williams, good evening and welcome. Noreen Dennison, good evening and welcome. Shauna Smith, good evening and welcome. Who else is here? Kirk Edwards, good evening, good evening. Holness have a way of taking people's children and turn them into criminal. Because this woman come there and you would think she come make sense. But all she did was come there, come make a fool of herself, just like once you see a JLP stand on the floor or open their mouth, you know the next thing to come out are blatant lies, sordid narrative, and misinformation Lloyd Williams, Marcia Essay, good evening and welcome. Ron Williams, this Nigel Clarke, we've always been told, Nigel Clarke is from good upbringing. He's a decent person. A decent thief, Dr. Clarke, behind the ring. Take off your ring, put it in your back pocket, and sit down on it, make it irritate you, Dr. Clarke. And stop hiding behind the ring and tell us what sweetheart deals you're involving with Don. Why you're using the taxpayers' money of Jamaica to pay Don for a building sitting there hosting ghosts at night. The amount of money that's been paid could have constructed a purpose building for that sole purpose and ease the burden, the ongoing burden of the taxpayers who are to pay almost $750,000 every month to Don for a building just sitting there. So don't be surprised by the whole heap of fancy, nothing but a bunch of noise coming from Dr. Dixon. It's just the way politics play. Them have to support their Lord and Master. They have been given a script to play from. And they have to play from that script. It is really not a lot more than that. And that's why we have to always keep an eye on these thugs that operate our politics. We have to keep an eye on these thugs that operate our politics. It's a purging and raking of our purse. The lack of public service and expenditure in our public service is hampered by the trillions that's been stolen from our public budget year in, year out, unaccountable for by both political class, by both political parties. But if you were to do the maths of just the Andrew Holness regime and the trillions of your money, Jamaica, that has gone missing under the Andrew Holness regime, could run a budget, a country's budget, for 3 years. Because just in 3 of your departments, $1.7 trillion has gone missing and accountable for Byron Muir. And this year budget for the financial year was $1.3 trillion. So we're actually stealing more than the yearly budget. So we should be running our budget off stealing money. We'd probably get more than running it off away, them left. So my suggestion to you, take the well-left money and run the country off the stolen money, because business them are do well. Or stolen money, business them and do well out of the stolen money. So use the stolen money run the country. And thief the clean money. Maybe we get a better service. Because everything happening after with politics is upside down, back and front, just like Doctor with the ring. Doctor with the jump up and down and defend Juliet. Doctor not have voice anymore. Doctor become stissified. Doctor become a wimp and a wuss. Doctor broke back mountain. No strength and vigor to jump up and down and explain to the Jamaica people, how could you have waste so much millions of taxpayers' money and empty building while trying to make other public servants look incompetent, such as Mrs. Monroe Ellis and Mrs. Curtis? The country will stay silent and make Andrew, Juliet, and Nigel, and Horace Chang, and the Jamaica Labour Party by extension get away with this blunder, who apparently pushed Miss Curtis earlier than she should have left. Left in a shroud of debacle and embarrassment, and is being scapegoated and disrespected publicly without a public apology. Mark Golden and the People's National Party. Should the Prime Minister and his wife not apologize to Miss Curtis publicly before Saturday morning? People of Jamaica, don't you think the Prime Minister and his wife, side wife, baby mother, whichever way you want to put it, apologize to Valerie Curtis before her departure this weekend? Or this will go down of one of the disgraceful moments of our parliament. This will go down as one of the most disgraceful moment of the Jamaican Parliament and our democracy, of silencing your opposition and scapegoating another public servant in order to protect your lives, your thieving, and your corruption, your cronyism, your nepotism, and your conflict of interest. The Holness regime has done enough damage, Blue Wave, to our country. The reputation of our democracy is slammed flat on its face. Do you trust this Andrew Holness regime and this Jamaican Labour Party to mess with your constitution? Is this the administration to take Jamaica to a republic? Can you trust this government in a republic? Where our check and balances will lay within our jurisdiction. Do you trust this government with the Constitution that regularly violate your constitutional rights as ruled by the court, not we just assist them? A government which violates your legislative process, a government which removes your accountability frameworks. Do you trust this government to disrupt the current status quo on which our country operates? Jamaican foodie, good evening and welcome. More of us Jamaicans need to continue to call for the resignation of the Prime Minister, his wife, and the Director of Public Prosecution, as well as the Minister of National Security, which is unavailable to bring the crime situation in Jamaica under any form of control. Carlos Gray said Nigel Clarke must go as well. Nigel Clarke has squandered our money enough, have stolen enough of our money, has used enough of our money to enrich his friends' wealth creation. The money that should be building wealth creation for your children, employability for your children, better education for your children, a more robust, advanced healthcare. Tufton and Flavor must go too. The whole mother shrudders of them need to go. Walk out in the sea, you lot. Don't look back. Just continue walking. And then Jamaica will be free of the bandage. Lennox Summit, all of them. Walk out in the sea. Continue walking and don't look back. Just keep walking. The entire government, Jenny says, must go. Because the truth is, they serve no purpose to us. They have failed miserably on all that they have promised that they would do for the people of Jamaica. And they continue to steal from you and continue to lie to you and continue to practice corruption more than they practice good governance. Time come, Radna Reed says. Enough are honor and the criminality. The Jamaica Labour Party, the current administration, has shown us that the people of Jamaica is nowhere on their agenda. The issue of the people of Jamaica is nowhere on this administration agenda. Dr. Clarke is a scammer, open, a thief, a criminal. Nigel Clarke is. I'm tired of the green people, them, Shauna Simmons says. Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Dr. Clarke is a criminal. Dr. Clarke is a criminal. The money of the children of Jamaica. Dr. Christopher Tufton is a criminal. Dr. Tufton prey upon the death of the people of Jamaica. Favour Williams is a criminal. Michael Coley. When they raid the education budget, and continue to miseducate our children, the Prime Minister is a criminal. because the Prime Minister can't talk when get him stolen goods them from. The Prime Minister's wife is a thief and a criminal because she go buck down people farmland where they, just like how the husband, they go buck down people house couple moons ago. Dean Jones told us, me and James Robert are the only bad man up here. We just learn what Jamaica call us, draw me attention to. In 2011, Holness sought to rig the election and sought to use violence, Mavis Gooden, to achieve an aim. To the point where by the time the ballot box get to the final count, everything crash. Ivan Bradford, good evening and welcome. Can you trust these criminals with the election process for September 2025? Andrew Mack, how are you, bro? Andrew. Can you trust this government with your election, your electoral process? With your electoral process for September 2025? A government who is waddled in corruption for the last 8 years. A government who has not listened to us for the last 8 years. A government who has treated us with disdain and disrespect for the last 8 years. Can you really trust this government in anything going forward? Is Dr. Dana Dixon making a fool of herself when she stand up and spoke the Jamaica Labour Party narrative without giving reasoned argument that we saw from Senator Crawford when we listened to his presentation earlier today? Holness have a way of taking people good picking and turn them into criminal. Aromatic Realistic TV, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining the Global TV family. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining. Young Jenna 37, good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining. Can you trust this government with your electoral process? A government who is unable to listen to you, a government who is unable to reason with you, a government who is unable to understand your plight, a government who is always lying to you, a government which is always deploying corrupt practices in your daily dealing, a government which stifled a democratic debate in front of the world. Can you trust this government in taking our country into a republic? Ronnie Herland, good evening and welcome. When this government has not shown in any way, shape, or form that they have any respect for our rights, the people of Jamaica are too silent to the tyranny and abuse by this government. This government, Clifton Atkinson, Louis V. Boss Entertainment, good evening and welcome. This government that has shown us from time to time, especially after the 2012 general election, when they got their undemocratic landslide, as they call it. This government has shown no respect to your constitution, your legislative process, or your frameworks of accountability, whether it be the committees in Parliament, which generally committees in Parliament, Annie Jones, are chaired by the opposition because it's a strong scrutiny body of the government. The Prime Minister draw those under his control. The office of the political ombudsman was destructed by this Prime Minister after the discipline of Michelle Charles after her inappropriate behavior during the 2020 general election. Holness never reappointed the office. He then took the office into the office of the Prime Minister just before the local government election. It's a question that every Jamaican should be asking themselves, Andrew. The office of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, an office that which ought to be independent of the government, is in the office of the Prime Minister. The office of the political ombudsman was merged just before the local government election with the office of the Electoral Commission. Now, the question is to the Prime Minister, who is our political ombudsman that we can complain to when there are malpractices, maladministration from the government or lack of service? Who do we complain to? Is there a person appointed, even though merged with the Electoral Commission of Jamaica? Is there a person within that commission, Prime Minister, that is appointed as the political ombudsman? It is important for us to have that clarity so we know who to direct our complaints to. And please, Mark Golding and the People's National Party, it is a question to be asked on the floor. We, the people, have a lot to complain and write about, and we need to know who to write to do those investigations on the people's behalf. So it is a question, Mr. Golden, that one is hoping and waiting to see yourself, Julian, or somebody, Angela, or somebody ask on the floor. X6 BMW, Lord, good evening and welcome. So it is, don't even start pan the illicit, don't even make me start pan the illicit 6. Because the Prime Minister and his wife, the Prime Minister and his wife might well be 2 of the illicit so and so. But if you, the people of Jamaica, don't stand up for your rights, this government will continue to chip away at it until you wake up one morning and you find yourself in full blown. I want to X6 BMW. Oh, Anesta send you? Because I know it's a whole heap of JLP operative over Twitter. I hope on a Nesta send you become sporty narrative. Like me say, send fail entertainers around as a mouthpiece ever since a mouth is being buckled. So, me don't know why. You tell me say there's no illicit sex. And the Integrity Commission did say so in the 2020 the last report, is it not? Says 6 MP under investigation for illicit enrichment. So I must Nesta send you come spout useless narrative like you have the fail dumb entertainer doing. But never mind you. Mr. Twitter. Everybody have a voice and an opinion. No, me not block them, make them do something there. Make them have them free speech. Sometimes you have to, you see, just like how Juliet, Vegas, and the whole of them, they have them free speech about how Mr. Golden lie and mislead about the report, and the whole of them gone in a hiding now. Nobody now want to come explain to it. Say no, them still right, and I saw it go. So we understand. I'm not saying you're being rude. I'm just saying you're spouting Nesta's narrative. Thank you for that, X6 BMW Lord. But the truth is, though, you must recognize that this government is a bunch of failure. Would you not? Or are you prepared to tell us the success of this government and how it has benefited suffering Jamaicans? Because them keep telling we say it happened, but we not see it. And we want to see it. We don't only want to see it. We want to feel it too. We want to feel it too. You understand? Andrew Max said if there's no illicit sex, then Juliet and Andrew should prove us wrong. And if there is no illicit sex, my friend, X6, the Prime Minister should be able to have his statutory declaration certified. If any of his enrichment, any of his assets and wealth creation isn't from illicit enrichment, then there should be no problem with the Prime Minister having his assets certified. Josiah 123. And the Prime Minister wife wouldn't be in court over stolen land, you see. So just like the whole of they have said, Mark Golden is lying. There is no outstanding report. Meanwhile, the CMJLP crooks and liars and thieves send back the report. Send back the report. I would suggest you to an earlier show today where Damien explained that. Coming out trouble numbers, but nobody no believe the Prime Minister about him tax lies anyway. But them send back the report to Paulette Jones immediately and send the criminal, Dr. Horace Chang, the illegal gun importer, the criminal and gang aligned Dr. Horace Chang. Send him out in a public. What kind of speculation? Speculation about what? Suggest, please. Send out Dr. Horace Chang to say there's no outstanding report, expecting the Auditor General to stay silent and sit on the report and embarrass Mr. Golden. But the Auditor General sent them back within hours. Send them back within hours, shedding light to the public that yes, they were there. Juliet then went on to scapegoat Miss Curtis. And our parliament has fallen flat on its face since then. Can you trust a government in such personal emotions in the execution of your job? Is the business of our country safe under this current administration? Is your rights and the rights of your children safe under this administration, which wish to to rewrite your constitution? Given that the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs cannot tell us how she's going to stop that hybrid presidency together, how she's going to glue the executive and the ceremonial together and give us a hybrid. Do you trust this government with the status quo of to change the current status quo of Jamaica? I am one that is of the view that we need to move ourselves away from the monarchy and imperialism. But I'm strongly also of the view that this is not the government nor the administration to take us into that direction. Therefore, I will be campaigning wholeheartedly and vote no once the referendum is being tabled. But tell Dr. Brokeback Mountain this war is not over. Either you give your money, you move on and you go on, or whenever we feel like it, Dr. Brokeback Mountain, Miss Mary Puss, we are going to tie our horse to you and drag you, doctor, with the ring in any direction we choose, because you are our public servant, a criminal and a thieving one at that. I want to thank you all for being here with us this evening on Global Television. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you have not hit the like button since you've joined the live, please do so before the live ends. Thank you all very much for being here today on all of our programs. Thank you to all of you who continue to come on board and be a member of the Global TV experience. Thank you all very much. And to all my new subscribers, and to another platform holder, aromaticrealistictv.com. Welcome to the Global TV experience. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for your continuous support doing angling. Good evening and welcome. JP, thank you. Thank you all. And we hope to see you right back here tomorrow, where we continue to shed more light on the happenings in our country. Remember, we are the last line of defense to save our democracy. That experience called Jamaica. Thank you very much for being here with us this evening. Join us back here tomorrow where we continue our thinking and discussion.